Welcome to another episode of Coffee with Alissa. As we continue to dive into special needs planning, today I'm going to be interviewing Amy Dolan-Strano. She's the Senior Vice President and Corporate Secretary of Achieva and also the President of the Achieva Family Trust. Amy's an attorney and was instrumental in the creation of the Achieva Family Trust, so I thought she would be a great fit to talk through pooled funding today. How are you today, Amy?
Good. Thank you for having me, Alissa.
Thank you for joining us. So let's start. What is a pooled special needs trust and how does it work in practice?
Sure. So a pooled special needs trust was created under federal law back in the early 90s. And it provides an option for people with disabilities to shelter some of their resources, to preserve eligibility for important government benefits, and to, allow those funds to grow over time. A pooled trust must be managed by a nonprofit organization, of which Achieva and Achieva Family Trust are nonprofit organizations. The concept allows for the investments to be pooled in order to gain access to different types of investments and let the beneficiaries have broader investment experience, and while also maintaining an individual account for each pooled trust beneficiary. Some of the advantages are it's able to be established, relatively quickly and inexpensively.
And who's typically a good candidate for a pooled trust versus a, traditional standalone trust?
So ideally, we would encourage, all families of persons with disabilities to plan for the future and establish and create a third-party trust, either a standalone trust or as part of their will. That gives beneficiaries, families, the best options, because at the beneficiary's death and termination of the trust, those assets, if there are any remaining, can be passed on to friends, family, charities, whoever the grantor, the drafter, wants those assets to go to. Pooled trusts are a nice option for people who haven't planned in advance and maybe inherit some money, a small amount of money. If they have resources of their own that build up over time, and they're at risk of losing government benefits by having too many resources, they can quickly and easily create a pooled trust. But again, ideally, we encourage people to plan ahead for the future and get that third-party trust drafted.
Sure. And I was going to ask, what type of assets can be put into a pooled trust? So you mentioned a couple. Are there anything else that jumps out there?
So, Our board has had a longstanding policy about just cash coming into the pooled trust because of the effect on the other beneficiaries. If we were to accept, other types of assets, it could have an impact due to the pooling on other beneficiaries. We've had some people in the past who've created a pooled trust when they hit a scratch-off lottery for $20,000. And, if they took that $20,000 outright, they could jeopardize their government benefits, have to spend down that $20,000 and then reapply. But by creating a pooled trust to house those lottery winnings, they're able to maintain their government benefits and have, that additional $20,000 in the trust to spend on some extras.
So we think about contributing and, how that impacts long-term outcomes, like lump sum versus periodic funding. Can you do either or both? How does that work?
Either are fine, and we have beneficiaries that do both. Lump sum payments, and also some people have, annuities or some kind of monthly payments, monthly, quarterly, annually, set up via sometimes a structured settlement. The one thing we encourage people, whether it's a pooled trust or a standalone, payback trust, not to overstructure. We've had some situations in the past where a beneficiary wanted to buy a car, but because the settlement had been overstructured, we had to wait, several months to let the funds come in and to build up so that there were sufficient assets to buy a car. And we hated to say no, but there just wasn't the assets at the time. So that is something that we like to, if a person is getting a settlement, to talk with the attorney and make sure that they're not, overstructuring, that there is kind of a lump sum that can come in to get the person what it is that they need and want.
And what factors can impact funding levels or sustainability over time?
That's a great question. Obviously, if someone, say the example we talked about, the $20,000 with the lottery, that trust is probably not going to last the person's lifetime. Whereas someone who has, $500,000 in a trust, we can be looking at that and making sure that that's available to last the person's lifetime. Our trust administrators will have a conversation with our beneficiary when the trust is opening to kind of find out what their wants and needs are, talk about a budget, what kind of things do they want to purchase from the trust, and are they looking at it from a long-term perspective or from a short-term, with that 20,000, do they have furniture, computers that they want to purchase, to use that, use those funds up. But we hate to be in a situation where, a younger person might be looking at exhausting a trust, but they don't have other sources of income. They might not be working or have, someone else to help support them. We do try to make sure that there's funds available for people to get their needs met.
And yeah, that's a good point. So government benefits, obviously, being eligible for those is hugely important for the majority of disabled people. So are there rules about distributions, like what can be paid through a pooled trust? Because, you obviously hate to impact the government benefits.
Right. And that's really one of the reasons why we exist. We want to make sure that people's benefits are protected because, Medicaid is very rich in services as far as people might be getting attendant care or therapies. And it's hard to replicate the level of service that someone gets through Medicaid, through the private market, even when there are funds available. So we're looking at, number one, protecting and preserving, government benefits. A lot of times people might not be as interested in, the investment performance and the investment return because they know that their benefits are valuable to them. And that's kind of the purpose of the trust, is to make sure those benefits are preserved. If distributions are made from a trust that could impact government benefits, someone could be looking at, either a loss of their benefits or having a large overpayment that they have to pay back to Social Security. And so, those are things that we want to try to avoid. Follow the rules, make sure that trust distributions are appropriate so we're not impacting government benefits.
So at a beneficiary's death, what happens? With pooled trust, is there a Medicaid payback? Can it go to somebody else?
Good question. Under federal law, the law provides that to the extent that funds are not used to pay back Medicaid, they can be retained by the trust, by the nonprofit organization. And our board chose in our early days to not pay back Medicaid and to establish what we call our charitable residual account. And so we retain those assets in the pooled trust only when the beneficiary passes away. And our board had set a policy where we have up to 30% of the fund can be expended each year for supplemental services and supports for people with disabilities throughout Pennsylvania. So we have an application, online application on our website where we're giving away this 30% each year. For the past several fiscal years, it's been about $2 million that we've distributed to people with disabilities throughout Pennsylvania for things like adaptive bikes and strollers, wheelchair ramps, modifications to home and vehicle to make it accessible. We do a lot of iPads, camps, and recreation. So we're really, really proud of that service. But we do like to make sure that all people coming into the trust and looking at opening a pooled trust understand that, we're not going to pay back Medicaid, but we are going to retain those funds for use with our charitable residual program. Other organizations, other nonprofits, have different models, where they might be paying back Medicaid. They might be, doing different things with the funds. So it is important to understand whatever pooled trust you're looking at, how they use those remainder funds.
So what compliance issues should families then be most careful about, when they're choosing and setting up a pooled fund?
It's important, I think, to make sure that the trustee has a policy about distributions and, making sure that, government benefits aren't going to be impacted by some of the distributions. Not too long ago, Social Security did not allow for the purchase of food via a special needs trust for someone who was on SSI. And, now that they've changed that, it's important that, your trustee, your pooled trust organization is on top of those changes to Social Security so that they can comply. Family members who might be serving as a trustee of a special needs trust, it's harder for them to keep abreast of all of the changes that the government makes. So that's something that we're looking at and making sure we're complying, making sure that, tax returns are filed on an annual basis, making sure that tax payments are made. We send out, K-1s. We file one big return on behalf of the pooled trust and send out K-1s to all of the beneficiaries for them to use for their personal taxes. The tax compliance is an important issue. Compliance with distributions, government benefits. And I think you also want to make sure, you want to talk about how the funds are being invested and make sure that, the organization has an investment policy. Our investment policy is designed for conservative growth. So ideally, the fund would grow to cover fees and then make some money through investment performance. Last year was a good year. Our funds earned about a little over 13%. And so that was a good year. But I think if you're looking at talking with an organization, look at the history of the investment performance to find out, how those funds are invested and are they growing.
And what costs are typically associated with pooled funding arrangements, and how would they compare to like a traditional standalone trust?
So we have a fee schedule, and our fees are the same as far as a monthly trustee fee, regardless of the type of trust, whether it's a pooled, payback, or a third party. But it's the setup of a pooled trust that is where the cost savings come through. Because documents, we have a standard form, joinder agreement, our master trust was approved by the Social Security Administration. So, there's no changes to this master trust organization master trust agreement that's been pre-approved. And then our joinder agreement where the person joins the trust. So a pooled trust can be set up, rather quickly and inexpensively. Even if the person has counsel, the legal fees are less because, there's not any kind of back and forth, negotiating. There's no individual drafting. But an attorney's involvement can, help to explain the concepts to beneficiaries and people with disabilities so that they understand. But overall, it can be set up relatively quickly and inexpensively.
And what are the most common mistakes you've seen with pooled funding strategies?
I think one of the common mistakes is that it is a pooled trust instead of being a third-party trust. Again, people haven't looked always at maybe changing beneficiary designations. There's been some people who have set up a third-party trust, but maybe the beneficiary designations weren't changed to reflect those assets paying into the trust. And instead, they paid out to the individual on an individual basis, requiring a pooled trust to be open. So I think that is a strategy, anytime that we're talking with attorneys, special needs planners, we're telling them to, make sure your trust document is set up, but also look at those beneficiary designations for other assets to make sure that the trust is named as the beneficiary and not the individual.
You've given, I think, people a lot to think about, about integrating their pooled trust into a broader financial plan if that's the right fit for them. So if there's somebody out there that's watching this and they're like, oh, I need to do something, right? They're starting this planning either, on time or maybe a little bit late. What could one action be today that could strengthen their funding strategy?
So one of the things that they want to do is, talk to an attorney, focus on planning for the future, developing a plan that meets, their needs, their situation. But take that step and talk to an attorney. And, you could also visit our website, achievafamilytrust.org. We have an education and outreach department. We have a monthly electronic newsletter. We're always putting on educational webinars. We do a annual conference each year, and gather as much information as you can from, not just our website, but maybe other, similar organizations and things that they may be doing to help educate people on special needs planning and the importance of planning ahead for the future.
Well, thank you again for joining me today and sharing all of your knowledge. And to our audience, thank you for watching. We'll see you next month on another episode of Coffee with Alissa.